Welcome to the Filmistines, the Double Feature podcast. Join us as we unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with their cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines. We offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level, where the $5 tier will grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Filmistines, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're an experience.
They're an experience.
All around you. And welcome back to another episode of the Filmistines. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today I am joined by my satanic friend, Lucy.
I know that's not me.
That's you, Lucifer. Remember, we post every Monday and Friday with brand new episodes of the Filmistines on all of our free feeds. And every other Wednesday on patreon.com/Filmistines for Patreon exclusive episodes. Our most recent Patreon exclusive episode is our ranking of Tim Burton's films. Some of their free episodes include War of the Worlds, X, Pearl, and Maxine. We have about 2 hours of the X trilogy. Is that what they're calling it? The Triple X trilogy?
Ah.
That kind of works.
That works.
About 2 hours of discussion on those three films coming out of Ty West. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come request a movie. Come subscribe for $1. Go rate us on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much.
Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at hempvillecbd.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
But today we will be discussing Osgood Perkins' 2024 film, Longlegs, with our boy Nic Cage. Osgood Perkins is the son of the man from Psycho, Anthony Perkins.
Oh, really? I've never seen that.
But I will be the first to say that I enjoyed Longlegs very much, especially the construction of it all, the editing and cinematography, and kind of overall lack of interest with characters interacting with the camera in any way. Thought that was very cool and helped build a really unsettling movie. This was a very fun experience to go to the theater for, but I have some major problems with the, last act. We get this strange, sort of out of left field exposition dump, and obviously such a verbose move takes all the wind out of this mystery. I don't know how much Longlegs is inspired by Seven, but there's definitely a flavor of it, especially when they're doing the investigation, when they're in the department looking at the pictures and kind of putting together this otherworldly investigation together. And one of the really shocking things in Seven is the incident and problem comes to them. And it's a really amazing move. And I feel like this movie could have done with that quite a bit and not run us over the coals with this mastermind plan of just taking families out one by one in the name of Satan. Especially doing Satan's work, it would have helped if it just stayed ethereal and much more debatable or ambiguous. But I'm very curious how you feel about Longlegs. Did it scare you?
Yes, this movie was terrifying. And we all know I'm a scaredy cat, but this movie was probably one of the scariest movies I've ever seen in my life. If not, it's definitely top 3 material. I would probably put it up there with Insidious as far as being creeped out way later after I've seen the movie. I'm talking about days later, not even hours later, just days later being on edge or uneasy or closing my eyes and picturing creepy shit. And it was definitely the composition of the movie that was terrifying. It wasn't even the subject matter itself. There's very little tropey horror things in the movie. The things that get me, the jump scares. Because after that initial jump scare, I'm no longer terrified of the movie. I was just scared in that moment. But we don't have that here. It I don't know, it just stays with you. I have never shaken my hands in the air in a terrified motion like you see in cartoons, except watching this movie. I'm glad I didn't have any popcorn or any snacks in my hand while we watched this movie, because I definitely would have dropped them. And I've always thought that was silly when you see that. Like, who gets so scared they drop their snacks? I think I might have dropped my snacks in this movie if I would have had any. And I'm not an audible screamer, but if I was, I feel like I would have just kept screaming the whole movie and maybe not even let anyone watching the movie. I mean, it was so terrifying that watching the movie itself made me feel like I wasn't supposed to be watching this movie. Like, bad people watch this movie. People who are satanic are watching this movie. I'm being possessed as I'm watching this movie. Like, there's that feeling. I don't know. There was evil in that movie theater while we were watching it. It was so terrifying. And I'm having a hard time seeing this movie as a movie while trying to eliminate that factor that I had trouble sleeping that night after. And I'm also having trouble placing this kind of scariness, because with Insidious, I definitely visualized the lipstick demon and seeing him in my rear view mirror, seeing him on the other side of my car when I was walking home from work. And even other movies that I would say have scared me, visualizing things in the corners, but it's always this thing. It's always the scary part of the thing. But in this movie, it was just more of a feeling that I was scared of than Longlegs. Although he was scary as fuck. Without Longlegs in that movie, I don't know if he would be quite as terrifying. You know what I'm trying to say? But putting all that aside, the characters were pretty creative. I thought this was based off of a real life crime or murder or whatever, because it was from the 70s, so it just made it feel like this could have happened, but it wasn't, or at least be inspired by a specific person, but it wasn't. So the characters felt pretty strange, but I liked it. It was also a slow burn movie, and at certain parts, maybe the second act, it almost got a little boring. But I don't know if I was just so scared that I couldn't even see it as boring, and I was just waiting to see what was about to come get me. But there was definitely a build-up. And I thought the story was very simple, very minimal, with a nice plot twist. And overall, I will probably never see this movie again. Not because it was bad, but because I just do not want to see this movie ever again.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on the fundamental reason why this movie doesn't rely on jump scares and the traditional horror beats, especially with our two main characters, Longlegs and Harker. There's this tendency for the camera to reject any kind of connection. With Longlegs, we literally see him cut off out of the frame, obscured with hands or just a profile kind of thing, until with when Longlegs getting arrested being that moment we really see him in all of his glory, his body, his face close up when he's getting investigated by Harker and them. But then we also have Harker, who is this strange individual who won't make eye contact with people.
She talks weird.
Yeah. Her eyesight won't stay within 45 degrees of the camera. She's very disconnected, and she, shares that with Longlegs, which I think helps build this unease. And the jump scare kind of element is really incredible. It's probably the coolest thing I've ever seen in a movie, actually. I'll just call it a jump scare at the very beginning, where we're seeing the crotch torso of Longlegs up to his chin, and then he kneels down and it cuts immediately because the camera just gives this impression of not wanting to look at Longlegs, truthfully. And the movie starts rolling, but it's a really kind of jumpy moment. And then immediately after, we see Harker's first FBI partner get shot just out of nowhere. It really sets the stage for you not being able to trust your intuition of horror films.
No, definitely. And I want to talk about that opening scene a little bit more, because it was at this point that I was on the verge of telling you, let's go home, because I was just absolutely terrified. When the movie starts out, we have this red screen, and I thought it was going to be this pretentious, artistic transition thing like we had in The Zone of Interest that I absolutely did not like. But then we immediately went into this white house, white snow, white sky. Even the sky was white. Everything was white. And it was such a big contrast going from the red to that white that I was immediately intrigued, but immediately off. Like, whoa, what am I watching here? And then we see a little girl who's also wearing a red jacket, and again you have that big contrast that you were just exposed to, and you're like, this is not going to be okay. We have that creepy car that you can't tell if someone's inside it or not. And then we go back to the girl, and then in the back by the house you see a creepy figure, and it's Longlegs, but you don't know that, but you just see something really creepy. He's also white, his skin's white, everything, he just looks off. And then we have that moment that you're talking about where he's on half the screen and you're just unsettled, but you're not quite scared yet. This whole entire setup, you're unsettled and you're waiting for something to happen, but you're not terrified until that jump scare. And it was just beautifully set up. That's the point where I just wanted to go home, because I didn't think I could handle the rest of the movie if this is how the introduction was going to be. I mean, it was just amazing. Not to mention the sounds that were happening as this was happening. And I honestly couldn't pay a lot of attention to the sound because I was just mesmerized by the color and the creepiness of Longlegs. But I'm sure the sound design really added to the scene. And then you hear Longlegs talk. And it's this raspy, creepy ass voice. Oh my god. I can't even tell you how in awe and terrified I was at the same time. I don't know if I've had that feeling before, and if I have, it's not very often that I can identify it. I probably just put it aside because I don't want to deal with that. But now I have to talk about it.
Yeah, the sound design in this was awesome. It was kind of the polar opposite of something like Insidious, where we have this, untuned violin thing going crazy, and that seemed to be kind of trendy with cheap horror movies. And my mind just went to, oh man, this is going to start another trend like that. You're noticing some of the power of Nic Cage, I think. And I was worried for myself and you, is Nic Cage going to take us out of this? Because he's a lot, and he shares a similar energy across his films. But there's something so performative and over the top that it kind of transcends a regular human being. And again, it's so impersonal to Longlegs that it's almost like it's just the suggestion of this entity in front of this girl or whatever scene he's in.
I don't think I would have known it was Nic Cage without it telling me it was Nic Cage. There was one moment where I saw it very briefly that it was Nic Cage, and it was in that interrogation room. But if I wouldn't have known it, I don't think I would have seen it. I also wasn't keeping an eye out for it, but he definitely has this presence that just creeps you out. In this movie, at least.
There's so many moments of it throughout, and it's probably my favorite part of the movie, where we see this build up to Longlegs' reveal. But every time the camera seemed to approach Longlegs, when he was in his basement area or when he was in that convenience store, when he would face the camera would cut. When the camera got a little too close in the darkness and we were starting to make out, who that was, it would cut. It would look behind him or something. And it was just such a great build up for kind of an anti-climax moment of a reveal in such a genius way, where we take this mega strange individual, we obscure him through technique, and then he's revealed to be nothing more than just a strange human being. And it still kind of reminds me of Seven in that way with Kevin Spacey. Like how all of a sudden these aren't typical human crimes. They're kind of a test of Satan's will and have this kind of transcendent nature, which I guess leads me into being so down on the twist ultimately. The exposition dump. I wish it was a little bit more unexplained ultimately, because I don't have a problem with Harker's mom being in on it. I like this thing of Longlegs being like, the man in the basement when he's the man in the basement. But when Longlegs started giving all the details, it just screamed kind of Blumhouse production, Insidious, with Elise giving us the keys to kind of finally understanding what's happening, when there was this impression of it being literally otherworldly. And I guess Insidious is also literally otherworldly. But I mean, I think it goes without saying this movie's kind of on a different level of production and mastery. But I really don't like that Harker has been given the keys to better understand what's happening and now has a mission. She goes to see her mom. Her mom is very much prepared for this encounter. And then we go along with the mom to see a whole mission played out, for the most part. It just feels like Oz Perkins didn't know how to end this other than the most obvious way. And I'm really kind of annoyed by it because, like I was saying earlier about Longlegs, he's just kind of this suggestion of the string of crimes happening. His note is there. There's the connection. He's revealed and then he dies immediately. But then we have this twist of almost like, well, Harker's mom was behind it the whole time. When we should have gotten this thing that Longlegs is still kind of at play even after death, I think. Especially because we get this kind of demonic imagery and figures, in the shadows and stuff. There should be this kind of otherworldly thing. I mean, and there is, but something more along the lines of Longlegs still at work. But again, it seems to be that, Harker's mom was behind it the whole time. It's like,
Well, I think we keep some of that with the orbs that are inside these creepy little dolls. That there's still someone else behind all of this, not just Harker's mom, because she's just a puppet in all this. She's the one delivering the dolls and making sure that they get opened, that they get out there. And that's her sole purpose and nothing else. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about the end of the movie because I can't get past the beginning of the movie. But we have this element of religion and this sort of questioning of beliefs and prayer and this manipulation of faith by everybody, which I think helps explain the ending to me. And it helps me justify why Parker would even want to save that little girl to begin with. She doesn't need a prayer and she doesn't need to believe in anything to do good, and also to have something that happened to her not happen to someone else. And I always welcome reveals in movies. I never see them coming. I'm never expecting them. And sometimes I feel like movies are made for people like me to watch them because I'm just in awe of the reveal.
Yeah, I guess in essence, I kind of get the desire to have a reveal, to have some kind of completeness in a horror film, because I totally empathize with wanting the implication of this is it versus the implication of a cliffhanger and the potential of there being a sequel. And as a creator, I can see you wanting to wrap things up to avoid unnecessary questions. Because without the reveal, it may have been more of the same, leaving the investigation open, maybe Harker dying, but also implying the potential of a sequel, which I can totally get trying to avoid in this situation.
This movie also has a nod to the Book of Revelation, and they even make a joke about it, which was pretty funny. And I'm not very familiar with it, just bits and pieces, but if I were a bit more familiar with it, I feel like that would help explain this trinity we have going on with Satan, Longlegs, and Ruth, the mom. Because I believe there's this like hierarchy of evilness. Not sure. Maybe I'm just interpreting it all wrong. And the big outcome of it is that good triumphs. And after Harker gets her little orb destroyed and now she's free and she's good, she sort of needs to triumph in all this. So it wouldn't really make sense to kill her. But I do like what you say about some of this finality not setting up for a sequel.
Yeah, I'd rather have 1,000 films that may or may not want or demand a sequel versus 1,000 sequels. So
yeah, I know you talked about the different camera work and different interactions between the actors and the cameras, making this film be especially eerie. And I don't think I noticed quite what you noticed, but I did notice some of the angles. And whenever we were looking at Longlegs, how we were looking at him from below, like we were the smaller ones. And at several moments when he was looking at you, he was looking at you from above, where you also looked small. And that also adds to his presence and his eeriness, his maliciousness.
yeah, where was he going when the cops came to pick him up? He had his suitcases. He was at a bus stop.
He was trying to flee. He was ready to go. That was such a weird, at least a weird shot of this evil being having his suitcases running away from the cops. There was a transition in the movie I quite enjoyed, and I honestly don't know if I've ever seen anything like it. And if I have, I don't remember it. But it was this, and hopefully I explained this correctly because I don't know the terms, but it was when the aspect ratio was a little bit smaller and it transitioned into a larger, wider aspect ratio. But it did it super slowly that you had to notice it. It wasn't a flip from one cut to another. It was so slow. And I don't know if I liked it in the scene it was on, but I liked the transition itself. Especially this being already a slow burn movie. We're doing all these things very slowly. Now even the transition is being slow. I liked it. Just don't know if I quite liked it where it was placed.
Yeah, I think she was in bed or something.
Yeah.
No, I totally get you. And it's this fourth wall kind of breaking thing, just like how the camera won't make any kind of connection with Harker and Longlegs. There's this kind of like what you said earlier, like it gives this feeling of, I don't know if I'm supposed to be watching this movie right now or ever.
I know I definitely wasn't.
I love when an aspect ratio changes throughout a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you don't always notice it because, sometimes you're too into it.
Yeah. Or the perspective switch is just so good that you don't notice it. Like in Brother Bear, I never noticed it for years. When he becomes a bear, all of a sudden things look different.
Yeah, the colors change. Things look more cartoony through Brother Bear's eyes. It's really kind of amazing.
Yeah, it really is. Whereas in something like X, where the aspect ratio switches from Pearl and Maxine to Bobby Lynn and the guy in that parallel scene we had going on, the aspect ratio switches there. And it's a little bit more obvious because they were literally filming a scene, so that kind of put you out of it. Or maybe when it switched from a scene to a TV and the aspect ratio switched. Again, because of this implication that you're filming something, it kind of makes it more obvious than in something like Brother Bear. How did you feel about Nic Cage and his makeup, or his mask, I guess? The physical appearance of Longlegs. Did you like it? I saw several reviews online, not a lot, but several that at least stood out, that they didn't quite like it, that this was obviously Nic Cage and they could have done way better with this, or how he looks like a clown and not creepy at all. It wasn't the general consensus, but it was still out there, so I was very curious to see what you had to think, because things don't typically creep you out like they do to me. Sometimes they make you laugh and my eyes are covered.
Yeah, it kind of gave Pearl vibes from X. There's this, I don't know, uncanniness to him where no human being would look like that, but there's such an element of wear and tear to them that it comes off like they're almost like a melting version of a former self, which I think totally works here. Was it Nic Cage? I mean, obviously, Nic Cage, I can smell Nic Cage a mile away. His voice is so recognizable. And it's one of the challenges people like Nic Cage have to face as actors, right? Is trying to be different characters and stuff. And one thing, like I was saying earlier, that helps Nic Cage is this kind of transcended thing about his personality and presence. It's just bizarre. So I think down deep, we don't really associate Nic Cageisms with a real human being. Like, Johnny Depp's much more believable. He plays a lot of the same characters in a lot of movies, right? But he's a much more believable human being.
Yeah.
Just period. Nic Cage is something else. He really is. The only problem I had with Nic Cage's performance was that one little moment when he was in a car and he was saying, "Mommy, Daddy." I was just like, this is maybe a little too much. He almost should have said something in tongue, parcel tongue or some shit. Or maybe even something backwards, you know, like how people put records on backwards and they think it's satanic shit. That would have been interesting. I don't know. That was like the only thing that kind of was like, made me smile at Nic Cage when, you know, it was supposed to be kind of a weird moment.
It was a hella weird moment. And this is what I'm talking about. You're like, oh, that's weird. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to see this on the screen. And I have goosebumps.
But his physical appearance is very good. Especially with the build-up of the camera not wanting to look at him. I like that idea of the camera being a little put off by him.
Mm-hmm.
Helps build this character in a really great way. And then, like I was saying, have this kind of anticlimax reveal of, oh, he's just a weird-ass looking man. There's nothing really much more to him. He makes dolls. That's especially weird, too, I guess.
Yeah, why are dolls always kind of creepy? I did see that the first time Maika Monroe saw Nic Cage in full costume was in the interrogation room scene. That was the first scene they shot where she saw him. And that kind of gave me vibes of The Shining, where they wouldn't tell the actress, right? They wouldn't tell her when she was going to be scared or when he was coming.
Yeah, what Jack Nicholson was about to do. They would tell her one thing and he would do something else and she would just be like,
Man,
that's filmmaking, man.
That's crazy. I could never. Although that would be the most authentic reaction you could ever get out of me, but I might never want to do it ever again.
Speaking of Maika Monroe, she's the lead in It Follows.
I saw that. I don't remember that movie. I just remember a swimming pool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the big moment when they think they got the guy.
Ah.
It's a decent movie. It helped kick off this new era of modern horror we're in now.
That suspense, that being followed suspense.
More along the lines of the overt kind of meta messaging of, you know, in that case, trauma follows you everywhere you go. The Babadook was another part of that. I think they're both Australian films too, those two.
Australians and their horror, making it too personal. I also saw that one of Osgood Perkins' inspiration for this film was Silence of the Lambs. And that's probably the one I remember the least. I think I remember Red Dragon the most, and then Hannibal, and then Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, I don't remember any of them.
Ah, okay.
It's been so long since I've seen them. I haven't seen them since I was probably 5 years old.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I saw them with my parents, but I don't know if I saw Silence of the Lambs, actually. I was a little too scared.
All right, man. Well, thank you for watching this scary movie with me and talking about it here today.
I don't know if I'm going to say you're welcome.
Well, do you have a budget guess?
My budget guess is 10 million? I feel like it could be less, but it is a horror film, and it's an hour 41, so not terribly long. But we didn't have a lot going on. Not a lot of sets. Quite a few, but not a lot. So I don't know. I'm going with 10 million. I don't think it'd be more than 10 million.
Yeah, not a lot of crazy motion.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any car chases.
And we don't have a lot of scenes with Nic Cage in full makeup.
That's fair, yeah. Well, it says here that it was about $10 million.
Whoa.
And it's gone on to make so far $30.2 million. So it's doing okay.
Did this have a wide release?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Well, over on Letterboxd with 342,000 people, they weighed in at a 3.5.
Wow, that's pretty good. I haven't figured out my score at all whatsoever. Part of me wants to give this a 1 because I was just terrified out of my mind, and no one should do that to me.
Oh, no, man. You go off of experience and emotion. You gotta
or
inflate
if
it.
Exactly, or if I should give it a 5 because I couldn't sleep. And I went to sleep, woke up, and it was 3 o'clock.
The witch's hour.
The witch's hour, exactly. And I was 10 times more terrified than I should have been. And I don't even know what time I ended up going to sleep. Probably when the sun came out and I felt safe. Walking out of that movie theater, of course it was nighttime, was scary. Scary as fuck. Movie theaters should not be that dark after a movie like this. I think I saw someone post online that scary movies should show bloopers at the end of them to help you be able to cope with your life. And I completely 100% agree with that. Give the people that don't want to see that shit like 5 minutes to walk out of the movie theater and then play the bloopers, play some happy songs, turn the lights on. I'm all for that.
Have some clowns come in.
No clowns come. No. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to place this movie. I'll get back to you on that.
There's some things that I love in this movie that are 10 out of 10, but the plot itself starts to implode. So I'm probably sticking around a 3, which is serviceable.
That's really serviceable for you. That's almost a 5.
That's a 5 in your book.
That's a 5 in my book. If you get scared easily, wait till this goes to streaming. Watch it with the lights on. Have a friend nearby. But if you love terrifying movies, by all means, go to the movie theater. Watch this at night. Watch this on the day that no one is going to go to the movie theater and you're alone. Go on a Wednesday night, the latest showing, 9 o'clock. Go by yourself. You'll love it.
Well, man, thank you for talking about this movie here today, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Filmistines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Monday and Friday on all of our free feeds, and every other Wednesday on patreon.com/Filmistines. For Patreon exclusive episodes, our recent Patreon exclusive episode is our Tim Burton ranking of his directed films. Our next episode will be on Lee Isaac Chung's Minari with Stephen Yeun, moving out to Arkansas to start a farm.
He survived the apocalypse?
I guess so. This is post Walking Dead.
Yeah, no, he didn't. He did not. We
Damn.
all saw Negan
Damn.
beat the shit out of him.
And if you use your brain, you can probably guess what the next movie is after that. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe for $1. Come request a movie. Go rate us on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoy the discussion and gain some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon. at patreon.com/filmistines and follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmistines signing off.